BioZombie is a 1998 horror comedy from Hong Kong, full of zany, hyperactive characters and an equally energetic directorial style. And it's also probably the most the Game Boy camera has ever been used in a feature film. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
And yes, Tim, I will go see Titanic with you.
Thank you.
Welcome everyone, this is a horror movie podcast. That was a slight reference to the movie we're doing. We talk about horror film, it's that simple. We start spoiler free and we'll give you a warning before we get to the spoilers. The movie we are talking about today is going to be very random. We are talking about a Chinese film, or specifically a Hong Kong film from 1998 called BioZombie. And why are we talking about BioZombie, you might ask? Well, because Tim messaged me and said the following: "Hey Pete, I watched BioZombie. Do you want to do an episode on it?" And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess.
How do you resist that?
Well, actually, my first question is, what the hell is that? Because I'd never heard of it before. And then I was like, sure, yes, we could do BioZombie. So, yes.
You over there just looking at the list of movies we have to do. Insidious, Talk to Me, yeah, sure, the BioZombie, okay.
We'll do BioZombie. Hey, you know what? Sometimes doing a random older movie is part of the fun of horror, right? Because sometimes you just want a nice 80s, or in this case 90s feeling movie. Oh, it's kind of like a mesh because it's a foreign film, there are definitely elements that feel it from a previous era. Because
absolutely,
you know, so we'll get into all that.
Do you mean people still don't use their Game Boy cameras as cameras anymore?
Well, no, to be fair, that was of the era, was it not? 1998.
Yeah, I'm just saying people don't use it. It's dated, like people don't do that.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that was like making me feel weirdly nostalgic in this because it was particularly stuff you don't usually see in movies. So you've got the Game Boy with the camera attachment on it, but you've also got a Sega Saturn, which is like a very specific type. Oh, it's a white Sega Saturn, which didn't come out in the US or Europe.
Interesting.
You got black Sega Saturns, but I recognize the white one. I've seen it in gaming videos and things.
Weirdly, it's kind of a it's kind of a video gamey movie. Like there's a couple like little nods in here that are kind of fun that I'm excited to get into. Yeah,
well, it's 1990. This is the year that Resident Evil 2 came out. It's not entirely impossible that Resident Evil 1 kind of maybe was part of the inspiration for this.
I mean, even the title, like, BioZombie kind of, Biohazard is the Japanese name.
And even the way that the zombie kind of starts is, like, it's a bio weapon, which again is very Resident Evil. So
absolutely.
Also, this is it's the first time I think I've ever seen it in a movie, because I'm assuming it's not a US drink, but this is the most prominent a bottle of Lucozade has ever been in a motion picture.
Is that a real drink? I had no idea.
The orange yellow bottle of it says energy on it, and I guess it is technically an energy drink, but it's not like, you know how like Mountain Dew, Monster, and all those all sort of like, they have that similar kind of vibe to them. This isn't like those. This is more like a slightly more Gatorade-y, I guess, if I was to compare it. But anyway, now look, it's a thing. It's like, because even though it was in Chinese text in the bottle, the color scheme and the font and all that was all the exact same as the one in the UK. So I'm like, oh, it's Lucozade.
Oh, cool.
So yes, it's a very prominent plot.
So have you had one before? Like, what is it? How would you rank it among beverages?
Well, the regular one I don't really like, but there's an orange flavor one which is quite tasty. There's also an apple flavored one, I believe, or is it? Yeah, I think it's apple.
Interesting.
Yeah. And sometimes they'll have like a limited edition one where it's like, here's your, I don't know, raspberry and lime flavor or whatever bollocks.
Yeah. So is Mountain Dew big over there? Because I feel like people love. Or at least a lot of people I know really love Mountain Dew over here, and I've never been that crazy about it.
Well, what's funny is that Mountain Dew only sort of started popping up in the UK around 2010-ish.
Oh, wow.
and I quite like it actually. It was kind of weird because it was almost like you've had Pepsi, Coke, and Iron Brew your whole life. Iron Brew's a Scottish one, and then all of a sudden this new one's there called Mountain Dew, and I thought it was quite tasty. I drank a lot of it for a couple of years, and then decided that I wanted to live past the age of 50, so slowed down significantly.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of like just a regular Mountain Dew, but I like some of the variants, like like you were saying, they'll do like, extreme voltage, like blue, like whatever explosion. I think there was like a black one that was like Dark Midnight or something like that.
Actually, one of my least, we're talking about energy drinks now, but one of my least favorite things about energy drinks, right, and this goes for less so Red Bull, but Monster's guilty of this, Relentless is guilty of this, and Rockstar's guilty. I mean, Rockstar's disgusting anyway, but it's also guilty of this, where they'll have flavors where the name of the flavor tells you absolutely nothing about what the actual taste is. They'll be like, this, like, they'll name a flavor after an athlete, and you'll be like, okay, this cyclist has got a flavor of Monster, but what does that actually taste like? And you have to Google, what does it taste like? And then it'll say, oh, this is like, it's like a lime drink. Oh, fine. Yeah. Now I can make an informed decision.
I feel like Gatorade does that a lot, where they have like Glacier Frost or something. It's like, I mean, I like glaciers, but I don't know.
I imagine a glacier would just taste of water, because it's literally just effing water. Anyway, so we'll get into BioZombie and we'll talk about it. It's kind of a zany, I'd call it a horror comedy. I think what's interesting about it is that it starts more comedy, but then as the plot progresses, it kind of becomes more horror. It's definitely got like a sort of swing to it in that sense.
Yeah, and I was surprised by the end. Like, as goofy and silly as it was, I did actually start to kind of feel something for the characters by the end, which it's kind of interesting.
Well, I guess that leads us into our question. Tim, what did you think of BioZombie?
So yeah, it might kind of seem like kind of a weird random movie to do, especially when we've been off for a while and there's like some pretty big ones that we haven't talked about yet. But yeah, I basically had purchased this I believe from Vinegar Syndrome, kind of sight unseen. I got the Blu-ray in a sale earlier in the year, and I've had it sitting on a pile for a while, waiting to watch. And I mentioned this before, but like I do like to partake like in these sales for like kind of these boutique horror labels, and it is so hit or miss, like what you get, like. And it's tough because I feel like Severin does this and Arrow does this, especially where they put so much time and effort into like the production of the movie itself that they
all look good on the shelf.
Yeah, they're all like, like everything looks like a like a cult classic that you missed from like the 80s or 90s, and genuinely sometimes you do get stuff that's like, oh wow, like I'm so glad that I found this, but I think more often than not it's a little bit like, oh yeah, there's probably a reason why most people have never heard of this or saw this. So so there's a lot of movies that I'm like, I always think of like, okay, these could be potential movies that we do, probably a lot of the time bonus movies because they'll be weirder or whatever, but yeah, I kind of always have my eye out for this. And this one,
for the record, like I even though I've switched to being mainly digital, like Arrow do big sales on iTunes, and because they're all dirt cheap, I'll usually get a bunch of stuff, and some of it's bit me in the ass. Like I've gotten some genuine like 1 and 2 out of 10s, but then I'll get something funny or something really fun, like Horror Express is maybe not an obscure one, but that's something we'll definitely do at some point because it's kind of a crazy little movie. But I'll get like what was that? Was it Chill Blast? Or there was a snow-based slasher movie that ended up being kind of fun. I think I know the
one you're talking about, yeah.
It's got a cool cover anyway. The Arrow cover is quite nice. But anyway, yeah. BioZombie.
I'd started this up, and originally I was going to watch it by myself, but then like 5 minutes in, I was like, all right, I think my wife is going to like this, especially because she has some family in Hong Kong, and we actually visited Hong Kong after we got married, so... one of the things like watching it is I did actually feel kind of nostalgic, like just seeing like the mall, and like I haven't been to that exact location or anything, but like I have kind of like gone through like stores and stuff in Hong Kong that kind of reminded me of that.
Honestly, on this particular subject, I remember parts of, like, not all the whole mall, but some malls that I've been to, specifically in the 90s and 2000s, I remember them having sections that looked like this small where it was all like tiny stores that were mostly glass, like, you know, and it was just like all of the products up against the window, and they were smaller in the room that I'm in now. But I remember there being a video game store that was like that, and it's like these little, you know, one person owned store. It's not a big franchise or anything, and it's just them. Like initially, you see one that's just all stuffed teddy bears and stuff like that. You see another one that's just all mobile phones, and that feels very nostalgic to me of just like a time, because I feel like those are mostly gone now, at least here.
Yeah, I mean, especially like, you know, you were saying everything is like so digital now that like, yeah, you don't, if you do go to a mall, I feel like it's like, I mean, I don't even know like the stuff that's popular, like the kind of stores that you'd see. But I mean, I feel like you go to a mall now, like half the stores are probably empty. The other half are like, you know, clothes or just like weird boring stuff that no one really you know, needs or cares about.
Clothes and Funko Pops, that's what used to sell at malls
pretty
now.
much. Yeah. You just described like walking into a GameStop. No video games, just but yeah, no, like I agree, like it was like kind of weirdly nostalgic seeing like, you know, these kind of like little like random stores and stuff. And then like I said earlier, like there's a character who's using a Game Boy camera, which like was the funniest thing to me, because I don't know if you've ever had one of those, but like the picture quality is horrendous. Like
I can imagine.
Like there no way like you would want to be taking pictures with that. But yeah, I was like, oh man, I think my wife is really gonna like this, and surprised she actually did. We had a fun time.
Okay, so, I'm assuming she speaks the language.
A little bit, like she can, because like she grew up with it, and I believe this was in Cantonese, but I do think it did had a Mandarin dub as well. But my wife's family, I think, speaks mostly Cantonese on their side, she kind of grew up with it a little bit, but like she's not.
I was wondering if like it would be frustrating watching it with the English subtitles if you speak the language, where like you need them obviously, but maybe she's like, oh, that's not exactly accurate the way they've translated that.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's like that bad, but like because it's probably helps because like she can kind of understand, but then also like there's probably some stuff that like I think she understands more than she's able to like speak it.
That makes sense.
But yeah, I think part of it was kind of nostalgic though, because like like remind her of like some like relatives or like being in the city and
that time talk. Our uncle turned into a zombie.
Of course. Yeah, Uncle Woody Invincible. But no, I actually so yeah, like I was saying, a lot of times these movies can be hit or miss, and I was actually pleasantly surprised because I didn't have super high expectations. I thought it might be kind of whatever, a silly movie, but I actually rather enjoyed this. Like it's not amazing by any means, but it does kind of remind me of a lot of other like zombie comedies from maybe slightly around this time. Like there's very clearly, you know, a Dawn of the Dead influence on this, but obviously, you know,
and
more
Evil
comedic.
Dead.
Oh, Evil Dead, yeah, absolutely. And the Peter Jackson movie, Brain Dead or Dead Alive. And then obviously it came after it, but I don't know, there was some like kind of humor and jokey stuff to it that kind of remind me of like stuff you might see in like Shaun of the Dead or something like later on. That I was actually surprised. I was like, oh no, I actually think, you know, this is like kind of like legitimately funny, and actually, yeah, I like the characters, and it's obviously like pretty cheesy. Like the special effects and the makeup aren't great, but you know, I think that kind of adds to the charm. And I feel like a lot of times we talk about stuff that just feels very generic, especially when we're talking about, you know, big studio Hollywood movies that feel very samey and, you know, don't really feel like they stand out or have a lot of style. And like I did think this had some, you know, like flourishes, like with, you know, the directing and stuff. Like I'm not saying that like, you know, it's like amazing like Criterion levels of like filmmaking or whatever, but there's enough of like style there that it felt kind of fresh watching something like this versus, you know, whatever 100th generic like studio movie that we've seen 100 times. Like I don't know, I thought it was like a fun little movie that had some heart, you know, good characters and some laughs and stuff. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by it, especially because it's like, you know, Not a movie I ever really heard of before. I don't know if there was a fan base for this. If I guess I had a release before now because I mentioned it to a friend who was like, "Oh yeah, like I rented that on Netflix when Netflix was sending discs out." So I was like, "Oh, okay,
right.
so I must have had like some like old like sub or dub of it, but I don't know if how well that was or if that was like kind of a cult thing, but." Yeah, and especially I feel like for a while we got really zombied out, but I kind of like now that maybe we're not getting as much zombie stuff, and it feels like the stuff that comes out now is I don't know, or well, obviously this didn't come out now; it's a rather old movie, but I don't know, like I rather like zombies, so it's always nice to have a new good zombie movie to like. But yeah, that's my story. I enjoyed it.
How do I follow up that Odyssey? No, I had fun with it. I didn't know anything about it. I went in so blind. All I knew was the title, and I thought I'd been swindled for a moment because it starts in kind of a weird way that makes you think you're watching something that's been well, basically filmed in a movie theater. It looks like a bootleg, but that's intentional until it turns into the real movie. And yeah, it's got, there's a very specific tone that I find that Asian cinema gets away with that like American cinema can only dream of, which is like this weird sense of humor where the characters are kind of yelling, and they're not like likable characters in the sense that they're kind of shitheads. They're trying to make a quick buck. They're robbing people. They're being kind of sexist, but it's kind of always entertaining to watch in an odd way. It's interesting.
How many other movies like where the main character like robs the love interest and you still like them?
If I'm going to give it a critique, I'd say some of the makeup effects do feel a bit
sure.
Whatever. Yeah, they're bad, right, at times. But yeah, the characters are entertaining. I think the setting, which ends up being mostly in this mall, like it leaves early on to like set some stuff up. There is a good like 20-30 minutes of setup, but then once the zombie stuff starts happening, they're kind of in this mall. But it's a very, very different type of mall to Dawn of the Dead, so it never feels like it's aping on that. Especially since it's not like, oh, it's a zombie apocalypse movie where the entire city is overrun. No. It's kind of like just one zombie gets in and it starts to spread inside the building, and that's where it goes. So most of that stuff is fun. It's got an energy to it, and that goes for the camera work. It goes for the music. Sometimes the music is absurdly inappropriate, but in kind of an intentional way, and that kind of works as well. It's definitely a fun time. I saw BioZombie and I got worried because there's a movie called Biodome, which is, I've not seen it, but I've heard only really, really, really bad things.
I recently watched it as like watched that as a random like Saturday afternoon Tubi movie where I was like, I would just throw something on, which I mean I saw it as a kid, but that's a horrible movie. It's the funny thing. Quick Biodome tangent, but. Oh God. The thing that's funny about it is like it made me feel old because when you're watching it, like the basic premise is like these two stoner slacker guys get locked in the biodome and like they make it crazy and start to party, and the serious scientists like, hey, stop doing that. But it made me feel old because like when you're watching it as a kid, you're supposed to be like rooting for like Pauly Shore and Adam Baldwin or whoever it is, and you're supposed to be like, party in the biodome. But like as an adult, I'm watching, I'm just going like, man, all that hard work that those scientists, they put so much time and effort, and it's gonna cost a fortune to clean that up. And
yeah, no, I get that. I've definitely felt that with some movie characters or plots where I'm like, I'm kind of siding with the adults in this one. I don't think you're supposed to, but I am. Oh dear, yeah.
Like
so
like watching like Home Alone and just worrying about like, what are the repair costs on the house gonna be, or like, oh man, the insurance premiums are just gonna be the
hey, with the house that size, they can afford it. All right.
Absolutely, yeah.
Put that out there.
One less trip to France for the year.
We've got like an interesting set of characters. We kind of get like our main duo who are Woody Invincible and Crazy Bee, our two main characters. they run a small bootleg DVD slash video CD store, and this is a very of the time thing.
Yeah.
And it's a very specific, not just to Hong Kong. I'm sure there's a lot of countries that did this, but I actually had a friend whose family was from Hong Kong when I was in school, and I remember when his dad would go and visit, like every year, it was like a constant thing he did. He'd always come back with stacks of these pirated discs that were video CDs, because I don't know if the laws are more relaxed in certain countries or whatever, but this seemed to be a thing where there was just stores selling this stuff.
Yeah, I was curious about that. That was something I asked my wife. I was like, "Oh, do you know if like they just had stores like there that were just blatantly selling like bootleg stuff?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." Like,
yeah.
I was like, "Oh, interesting."
Yeah, it doesn't happen here or the US, I assume, where this was ever a thing. But for whatever reason, certain countries clearly don't have either strict laws or, at the very least, no one's enforcing them. if this is going on. But they're like, I mean, hell, there's a scene right near the start where this guy comes back to complain that the first 10 minutes of the video are black, and then the quality's terrible, and they basically say, all right, you know what, just pick 2 free pornos and leave. To get rid of them.
It's funny because like they're bullying him, but they're also like, you know, treating him like a customer, like the like I think that's kind of like that tone you're talking about, where it's like they sound very angry and they're yelling, but they're also like, well, okay, like, you know, they don't want to, you know, dissatisfied customer, like, yeah, pick 2 free pornos, quick, hurry, pick them, get out.
Yeah, it's this weird thing where no one in this movie feels like a real person. They're all these like over the top cartoon characters, effectively. But you've got those two. You've got kind of the main love interest for Woody, which is Rolls, who works at the beauty place with her friend.
I'm curious if there is like, I don't know if it's like a cultural thing, but I'm interested in like, are these the characters' actual names, or is it just like,
I doubt
something like, is it like, oh, like for a movie you have interesting names or whatever, you know what I mean? Like,
these all feel like weird, wacky nicknames to me than anything else. And then another character is Sushi Boy, who works, you guessed it, at the sushi bar that's in the mall. And he's got a big crush on Rolls as well. That comes into play throughout the movie. And then other than that, there's security guard and the other characters who there's the awful asshole guy who owns the little like, I don't know if it's like a pawn shop or if it's just like literally just a phone, like a mobile phone like store that he buys and sells phones in. And his
like every
wife.
every zombie movie has to have like an asshole dude with like a kind of like quiet wife.
Yeah. And Crazy Bee likes the wife. In fact, we're introduced to the wife with him staring through the window at her cleavage for a solid like 3 minutes or whatever it ended up being. So that is our cast of characters, and yeah, the music's kind of wacky at times. The camera work it'll do. Not only does it do like Dutch angles and do a lot of like movement and stuff, but there's moments where it'll do like, oh, we're going to have all the characters pose like their video game like selection scenes, like, and have stats come up, or we're going to do a moment where we do random freeze frames in the middle of a scene to like build more tension. And it always felt like it was having like fun with whatever it was doing. So yeah, it's a fun time.
Yeah, I'm glad you liked it, because and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do it, like because it's just something kind of fun and different, and you know, it's I think it's more interesting to discuss than the, you know, the 17th movie about trauma, you know, this year. Like,
yeah, I mean, I never know with you though. There's always a chance that you're making me watch it because you hated it and you wanted to have someone.
That's true too.
You know, be in the misery with you.
That is true.
It's never a sure thing. But you know, we'll get into all the details and the spoilers in a second. But is there anything else you want to talk about before we get into spoilers?
I think it's really important that you neuter and spay your pets. You know, I don't know.
About the movie, Tim, I thought that was implied. Just in general. All right, well, I'll say spoilers then for BioZombie. You have been warned. So like I said earlier on, the movie starts with like, you know, it's like fuzzy credits and there's like heads getting up in the middle of the screen, and you just hear the two main characters talking about people in the room. They talk about a hot chick. They talk about two guys they think are gay, maybe slightly homophobic as the 90s.
Yeah.
But then it cuts to like them for real, like going up the escalator and going to where they work, and we're introduced to all our main characters over the course of all this stuff. What's interesting about these two is they are just these slacker characters who, I'll be honest, there was a lot of dialogue in this movie and they were talking really fast, so I actually almost at times had trouble keeping up with the subtitles at points, especially early on. But the gist of it, what I got is that they're looking after this store for one of their dads, who actually owns it. We never see him in the movie. He's just like a voice on a phone at one point. But he wants them to go pick up his car from the mechanic, right? Reasonable enough. But they take the money from the store that they're supposed to use to pay the mechanic and go gambling on the horses instead?
Yeah.
Is that the sequence of events? And they lose all the money on the horses, so they don't have enough money to pay the mechanic. So then they need to have money to pay the mechanic, and that's like a plot point for a bit. Although, to be honest, once the zombie stuff starts, no one remembers or cares about that anymore. But
this scene, it was kind of funny. They are weirdly interested in the size of this guy's balls.
After they're watching the horse race on the TV, they come out and the mechanic's under the car in his little, wheeler thing. What would you call the thing the mechanic lies on? I don't know. Anyway, so he's under the car.
Car sled.
Car sled. He's wearing shorts, and like one of them says, "Look at that," and I'm like, okay, I can tell they're looking up his shorts, but what are they actually like noticing here? And then eventually one of them goes, "He's got a ball is the size of my fist," and then like one leans down and they're looking up and they're just talking about how big this guy's testicles are, and I'm like, what are we doing right now? What's happening? Is this even a movie we should be doing on streams? I was thinking at this moment. I'm like, what was Tim made me watch? The only hope I have is that zombie was in the title.
Oh yeah, well, I think my wife theorized around this point in the movie. She was like, "Oh, does his balls have something to do with the zombie outbreak?" And I was like, "I don't know. I guess we'll have to watch and find out."
Oh dear, there's a lot of weird little moments of humor like this.
Yeah, it is kind of funny when you're watching it, but yeah, it is extremely inconsequential to the movie at large.
Especially since this leads to like they say something to him which makes him want to pick a fight because he gets annoyed at them. It's because a bug crawls up his shorts and he sort of like has to like jump out and sort of wriggle it out, and then he's looking at them and they start picking a fight. But the mechanic's got backup. He has like 4 buddies who come up and they have this stand up, and this is basically to show that our 2 main characters talk a big game, but they are absolute cowards when actually faced with adversity.
I actually thought it was like really funny, seeing him kind of like, because again he's like yelling at the people, but it is like if you're listening to actually what he's saying, it's obvious he's very scared and like doesn't want to fight. So he's just kind of like, "Oh, is this how it's gonna be? Like, come on, we're gonna fight." And then more people show up. And he's like, "Okay, well, come on, then we're gonna do it like 1-on-1." And then like he looks at the guy and he has this like something on his shirt like special like martial arts school, and then he's like, "All right, guys, come on, what are we doing? Like, let's like relax, who cares? Sorry, right?"
I'm trying to think of who, like, an American actor that I can imagine delivering that like scene, because there's definitely there's one I'm trying to think of and I can't think of who it is, but there's definitely something I can imagine certain actors delivering this.
Yeah.
But so they're driving the car home. Meanwhile,
I don't know if the first thing that kind of popped in my head was like maybe someone from like It's Always Sunny, maybe Dennis or something.
Oh yeah, Dennis, or even Charlie Day. I could imagine Charlie
could
Day.
work. Yeah.
I could see that. Or Mac. That's all 3 of them.
Like, even D. Why not?
I could see Danny DeVito doing it as well. So we're introduced to okay, we don't really get much context for who these people are, but there's like 3 men. One of them,
the actual zombie part.
Yeah, one of them's in like a military jacket, but the other 2 are just like business suit looking guys, right? And they're
and the military jacket kind of looked like just like a airplane outfit.
Oh yeah, it was like I had the stripe, but yeah. I mean,
that's another thing. My wife was like, "Wait, is this guy like in the military or is he a pilot?" We're like, we're not sure.
but the other two guys are in suits, and these three guys are all Asian, so presumably just from Hong Kong. And then the other three, which I guess is also technically Asian, but they're from Iraq, from the sounds of it, and they're there to like basically they're like Umbrella, right? These Iraqi guys that are like Umbrella from Resident Evil. They're here to sell bioweapons to whoever wants it, and these three guys are buying the bioweapon. Now, are they part of the Hong Kong government? Are they a terrorist group? I have no idea. The movie doesn't tell us any of this information. Who knows? So, like, they have like a crate with a zombie in it, and we don't see the zombie. It's kind of like hidden, right? But you sort of just get the arms kind of sticking out, and they send one of their guys in to like check. Oh, is it actually unkillable? And the guy gets pulled in, and the zombie's like, throws out a hand, like a comical looking like cheap hand, and it's like, okay, that seems to work. And I got really confused about this next detail actually, but the bioweapon is in a bottle of Lucozade. Why is it in a bottle of Lucozade? I don't know. I'd say it's product placement, but I can't imagine the manufacturer of a soda being like, hey, we'd like our drink to be presented as this dangerous killing liquid.
Yeah.
That seems a bit weird to me. But it's a bottle of Lucozade. And my impression here was that this was like in Jurassic Park, how the embryo thing's in the shaving can, right?
Yeah.
This is just like a disguise. Like, it just looks like a bottle of Lucozade, but this guy actually got a secret bioweapon in it. Although I love that it still came in like a case that had like a foam like indent for the bottle, as if as if it's like a nuclear bit of material that was in the foam, but it's just a bottle of Lucozade. But anyway, but at the end of the movie, just to skip ahead here, like, there's a news report saying, there's a zombie outbreak's happening. Do not drink any soft drinks because they could have biohazard material in them. And I'm like, wait, I thought it was just this one bottle that was being used to like.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Wait, why do you think? Why does the news think that there's like all bottles of Lucozade are a risk, or even other drinks? Maybe the entire regime is corrupt. Coca-Cola and Pepsi have got biohazard materials on their beverages.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was a little confused about that, but the thing is, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Maybe the ending thing's a translation problem. I don't know, because it doesn't really make any sense. But
yeah, unless like if this was like a terrorist thing, maybe this was just like one cell of the terrorist group, and then like there's another one that was poisoned the other sodas or whatever. But
why they want to ruin Hong Kong by turning everyone into a zombie, I don't know, but
great question.
I think it's a good question. But yeah, so basically our main duo actually, when the guy in the pilot jacket is running away with the case with the Lucozade in it, he ends up getting hit by the car from our main two characters who are driving their dad's car / boss's car home, and they're really worried they've killed him. So they put him in the boot, or the trunk, sorry for the Americans.
Well, so they have him on the side of the road, and like as he's dying, he says like the name of the soda. He's like Lucozade, and they think, oh, it must mean that he wants to drink some.
That's right. Because he's not drank it yet. This is why he becomes a zombie. Is because they actually feed him the biochemical via the Lucozade, which is actually really funny. I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually a really funny detail. And then they put the bottle of Lucozade in the middle of the little cubby in the middle of the car, next to the brake, which is relevant for the ending because it comes up at the end. But they put him in the back of the car, and they drive back to the mall where they work, and they open the car back up. They look at him, and he's looking a bit worse for the wear, right? They think maybe he's dead, maybe he's not, and they basically leave him there. And then while they're gone, like, he eventually gets out and like kills a guard or whatever it is, and that kind of is what starts the zombie plot. But meanwhile, there's actually a lot of other stuff that happens before the zombie stuff really kicks in, though, because these two guys need this money. This is the only part of the movie where this is relevant, where they need money to pay the mechanic. So they trade in the soon-to-be zombie's cell phone, right? This little yellow flip phone, and they get a little bit of money for that, but it's not enough. So like, what do we do?
Which at the time, that was probably like state of the art.
Probably. Much like that Game Boy camera that you had. Yeah. So their plan is, one of them notices Rolls, right? Who they did bump in. They bumped into the love interest at the start of the film on the way to their store. Actually, I've skipped over some random bit as well. Now I'm thinking about it. The guy who returned the DVD at the start.
Oh yeah.
Who was threatened with the light gun from the Sega Saturn, and told to pick 2 porn movies. He's back.
He's like a random like nerdy guy. Like he has glasses and stuff. Like
yes. When they shut the card boot, right, and they're about to go back inside, he's just standing there and he spits in their face. He just spits at them. And they never actually bring up why. Like, I'm assuming he's unhappy with the 2 porn DVDs.
It must be, yeah.
It must be, but never really. But of course, they chase him, strip him down to his underwear, and just threaten him some more. And that's kind of the end of it. It never really comes up again. So, you know.
Yeah, like I don't even think he comes back as a zombie or anything.
No,
like
I thought he would, yeah, but he doesn't. So, regardless, their plan here, when they see Rolls, the love interest, walking past the bathroom, they're like, oh, we should rob her. She's got money. Right? So,
yeah,
they go in, and as she's coming out the bathroom cubicle, like, one of them just puts a bucket over her head so she can't see them, and they just kind of like hold her down whilst one gets the money out the wallet, and then they pull the ring off of her finger, and they bolt out before she can see who they are. And then she comes out looking for whoever did it, and she walks past their store, and like Woody's just sort of pretending that he's half asleep on the counter. And she says that she's going to take him to dinner because she wants him to go after whoever robbed her. But as soon as she goes to see her friend afterwards, she's like, okay, those 2 idiots at that video store, I think they robbed me, so we're going to get them drunk at dinner and then like find out the truth. Which, you know, fair enough, solid plan.
Yeah, and again, I'm kind of like I do wonder if this is like a cultural thing or something, because yeah, I feel like, you know, in the States or whatever, like, yeah, someone robs you, like you call the police or whatever, like, yeah, you'd be like, you wouldn't be like, I think these 2 jokers like might have done it, let me get back at them or whatever.
Yeah, I guess she thinks she can have more fun getting back at them than the police would, you know, punish them. Like, that's my only assumption here. So they go to the sushi place, and we seen it. There was a quick scene earlier on where clearly the sushi boy has a crush on Rolls, because he gives her like this big discount constantly, and he's like super jealous watching her be with Woody, even though he has no idea. We know as the audience that she's just like luring him into a trap to try and prove that he robbed her earlier, even though she makes no like significant advancements in that category, and instead just starts making out in the bathroom with him later on, and almost having sex if the zombie stuff didn't kick off.
And I think she specifically does say like, were you the one that robbed me? And he's like, yeah, baby. Like something like that. Like
yeah, also they start making out, like, I mean, it cuts away and cuts back, but she threw up on his shirt, like in the previous scene. And
we didn't even talk about his shirt. Like, I don't know. Like,
it's a character in and of itself.
Yeah, it's hard to describe, but it's like a very tight, long sleeve blue shirt, which is like,
I'd say more purple, but sure,
purplish. I mean, it doesn't seem blue to me, but yeah, I mean, sure, somewhere in between. And then, but like it has like all this like this person's face on it, and like I couldn't. I'm sure it's maybe someone somewhat recognizable over there or something, or I mean maybe not. I don't know, but I kept wondering like who the hell is supposed to be on this shirt.
It was a very loud shirt, I suppose you could say. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, so basically it's Shushy Boy who, whilst he's like, because he's outside the bathroom listening to them making out, and he's hearing her say "kiss me," and he's getting really upset, and that's when he's attacked by Pilot Zombie. Pilot Zombie comes in and bites him, and we should probably mention at this point that the design of the zombies in this is kind of like, they basically all get boils in their face. Like, it's not just that they're kind of dead, that they all get these boils. And they seem to retain some semblance of who they were, because the Pilot Zombie like gets his phone back, and then Sushi Boy is constantly still in love with Rolls despite the fact that he's a zombie.
So this very much feels like to me like a riff on like the Romero kind of zombie stuff, like especially Dawn of the Dead, where they kind of set that precedent where like as a zombie you're kind of like attracted to or kind of driven to like what you did as a human. Like in the case of Dawn of the Dead, that's why zombies kind of flock to the mall, because it's like something that's familiar to them, something that they recognize as from when they're humans. And then what this is kind of doing is taking that to like an absurd comedic degree where it's like it's not just like these kind of ingrained memories. It's like, no, they are actively like kind of like doing stuff that they did as humans, especially like the big thing with Sushi Boy, where he's still trying to win over roles and like give her presents and protect her, which like honestly like ends up being kind of like sweet and endearing by the end.
Because like he defends her from other zombies when they eventually show up, because for a while it's just like one zombie, then him, and then eventually there's like actually a little, like, not a horde, but there's like enough of them running around that
Also, actually, just to kind of talk about that real quick, one thing I don't know if you thought this, but something that seemed kind of weird to me is like maybe it's because we spend so much time in this like small little section of the mall, but it felt like, so no pun intended, but like it felt like it was like very late and dead by the time they got back, that it seemed like there's no one else in the mall. So it kind of seemed weird that like you see no one else in the mall and then all of a sudden there's like zombies everywhere they go. Like,
well, that's the thing, like the zombies, like some of them are wearing maintenance outfits, which clearly told you, they're janitors or whatever who are working late. And then some of them, like for whatever reason, when there's like a group first sort of shows up, they're all wearing like football tops, which makes me think that the mall has like maybe like a training like area, like a sports like center or something like that.
Sure.
And that's like where some of the zombies, like it's such a specific detail that like a bunch of people all wearing the same like shirts all come in. I have to imagine that's like them, like at least either there's a deleted scene showing you where they came from, or there's like they thought about this and sort of put in that detail for headcanon reasons. It's the only explanation I've got for you. But of course, like eventually they become aware that there's zombies at play. And before that all sort of like really starts to ramp up though, is because the pilot zombies like broken into the phone shop place. That guy's pissed off and he thinks the main two did it. So the security guard calls the police, which the phone guy's not happy about, probably because some of his product is stolen, I imagine.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
And so we get a whole segment to just sort of heighten the tension where our main two guys are handcuffed like in the security room, and the police are kind of looking into stuff. And even these two police guys are like kind of wacky characters, and because one of them's like always staring dead serious, like he's really intense.
Yeah, and like they're asking like the security guard some questions. I forget what he says, but like they ask him something. I think they asked him something about the security camera, like
pan it to the left.
Yeah. And the security guard's just like, no, that's not how a security camera works. Like, are you stupid? And the cops get really upset. Actually, there is one really good gag I think we skipped over though. When the police are first interrogating them, it does like a split screen where like they're each giving the different answers.
Yeah, this is a fun thing. Yeah, so they're interviewing the two main guys, and it looks like it's a split screen where they're each been interviewed at different times, or maybe the same time but at different places. And the reveal at the end of the shot is the two cops who are kind of like they've both got their back to the middle of the screen, so they're both sort of like backs to the split. Is that they turn around and the camera pulls back, and it turns out the line that looked like the split in the screen was actually the corner of this sort of like mirror that's at the corner of this like intersection of the mall. And it's like there wasn't a split screen at all. They were literally both standing back to back, and it's a really fun look. It was such a surprise at the end of the scene. It was just like, oh, that's just a really playful thing you just did. Very good.
Yeah, it's legitimately like very funny, but then also like impressive how they pulled it off. And that was like something that made me feel like, oh, like I could easily have seen that as like, a gag in like an Edgar Wright movie or something. Like it felt like very much of like
Edgar Wright is a big nerd. It's not impossible that he saw this before he co-wrote Shaun of the Dead, right? That's not impossible at all.
Yeah, even like a few things that like like at one point when Rolls is kind of like with those like football guys, she's kind of for a second like pretends to be a zombie, and like is gonna like kind of like eat the sandwich sign. Like again, that kind of remind me of like, oh, Shaun of the Dead, yeah, when like they're doing like the zombie acting and stuff. So I mean, it could just be a coincidence, but yeah, I was curious like if that's
but then she doesn't eat the finger she's supposed to eat, and then the other zombies realize she's not a zombie, and then Sushi Boy has to like defend her. And then luckily at that point, that's when what's his face, Woody intervenes. And at this point, he's got a gun that he's taken from one of the cops. But before that, though, there's a whole thing where like the pilot zombie comes in and bites the two cops and the security guard, and they're still like handcuffed. So B gets like the keys from the pocket, but then he drops the keys or loses them before he can like let out Woody. So he just starts like sort of like hacking with this little machete thing at the desk, and Woody ends up having to run away holding the computer monitor that he's kind of handcuffed to. So that's like a whole like segment while they're running around, and they can't get out because the pilot zombie actually hits the button for the shutter inside the security room, so they actually don't make it out, and they're like trapped inside the mall. So you know, I like it because I love a good like trapped in one location against a threat movie, you know. And even the idea that they find a safe space by hiding in the beauty parlor for a while where we can have a bit of peace. Like it's got a lot of those those zombie horror movie tropes. And even though it's a mall, which instantly makes you think of Dawn of the Dead, it's a very different mall for one, but it's also a very different setup because it's not like, oh, the world's overrun with zombies. It's very much the start of something instead. Yeah. So I appreciate that. Around here is when... So it turns out the guy who runs the phone place, who's the asshole and is always yelling and is a coward, he's always like demanding his wife do things and calls her stupid, you know, go do this for me, bitch, things like that. And he's hungry, right? And the woman who works in this place says, oh, we've got some cups of noodles in the fridge or whatever. And he instantly just turns to his wife and is like, well, what are you waiting for? Go make me some noodles. And this woman actually makes noodles for everyone. She comes out with 4, like, so because like Woody's away rescuing Rolls at this point, so she comes out with 4 of these cups of noodles all ready, and she hands them out. And at this point, because like at one moment, B like stuck up for her, the husband looks over and sees him eating some noodles, sees B eating noodles, and throws down his cup and goes, why'd you give him the seafood flavor? You know it's my favorite. He gets all jealous. So she hands him hers. And then B says, oh, you can have mine then, to the wife. And then that makes the husband pissed off again, and he slams his second cup of noodles down. And he's just getting jealous. He doesn't, and later on when they're all like, you know, but after Woody and that come back and they're all like psyching up to leave and look for, you know, supplies or trying to find a way out, even though it's dangerous. Like the wife wants to go, because B says, hey, let's go, we can't stay here. And it's when she wants to go with him that the husband's like, okay, fine, let's go. But he didn't want to go before then. So we get a lot of like jealous husband stuff coming up around here.
Yeah, well, what's kind of funny thing that this movie does is it starts off so over the top and silly with these two main characters, but then I feel like as it goes on, you do get like some genuine moments where like I feel like, yeah, this is actually like a good, like it's funny, but it is a good showing of like how much of an asshole this husband is, and it is actually kind of endearing to see, you know, B and the wife like kind of hitting it off. Like it like, you know, it kind of becomes like a little bit of a love interest where you're like, oh, I kind of, you know, hope that they get together. Like,
yeah, and then because they all end up dying in pretty much the same scene. It's after they get to like the hardware place and they all have like weapons for a bit, but it's not too long after that.
And that's when they do like the like video game kind of like select screen, which was really fun.
Pardon me. The husband's actually a dick and pushes out the woman who works at the salon.
Oh yeah, I forgot. There's like the other woman.
They're getting in the elevator.
What an asshole.
Yeah. And he pushes her out, and they all obviously hate him for it. And then he gets separated from the rest of them, and he ends up hiding. He sandwiches himself between like a Coke vending machine and the wall, so he's kind of like hiding between like in this little slot. And then a zombie comes up and starts banging on the vending machine, and he's sort of in there being squished as the zombie's rocking it back and forth.
That's funny.
And for some reason, he's still trying to like put a coin in to get like a can. I don't know why.
My guess is that he was trying to get a can for the zombie to make him go away. Like, I think he was like, all right, if I just get the zombie wants a soda, if I can just get it for him, maybe he'll leave. That's what I interpreted it
I think
as.
I get that, but he also tried doing it before the zombie showed up, and that's when the zombie showed up. So it's like, so I was still thinking he wanted one. I was like, are you really trying to risk yourself just because you want a can of Coke? That just seems a bit risky. But he ends up getting bit. He actually does something heroic. He jumps out and tries and helps his wife because his wife's getting attacked by a zombie, but they both get bit, and then B shows up and he gets bit here. And amusingly, we were introduced to this wife character with B looking at her cleavage at the start of the movie.
Oh,
as B is getting bit and is dying, he's looking at her tits again. As
like a zombie rips like open her shirt.
Yeah. so he literally dies looking at her bra, her chest. Well, he's technically not dead yet because he's still alive to have like his heart to heart with Woody, because they go back to the security room and Woody holds him. And he's like, I'm cold, Woody. And Woody like hugs him. He's like, hey, Rolls, come over here. So they're both hugging him to try and keep him warm. And they have like such a, again, there's just this like thin layer of sexism here where he's like, oh, I wanted to watch Titanic with my sweetheart. We've not even mentioned this, right? I mean, I made the joke at the start, but there's several times in this movie where B repeats the fact that he wants to go see Titanic with someone, and he keeps asking people to go see Titanic with him. It's set in May 1998, which it might have still been in theaters by that point because it played for a long time because it came out in December 97. It maybe opened a little bit later in Hong Kong, I'm not sure, but it was playing for a long ass time.
And at one point I noticed they did have a Titanic poster in their store, so they have to have a bootleg of it.
I'd assume so, but maybe he doesn't want to watch the bootleg. He wants to watch the. That was the other thing. When the guy complains at the start of the quality's not good enough, he's like, "If you want good quality, then go to the theater." But no. So as he's like being hugged and dying, like Woody just casually says, "Oh, like I don't need Rose. You can have her." And Rose is sitting there. I'm like, "Are you really saying that in front of her?" But it's oddly endearing in the moment because he's dying, so it's just like, say whatever's going to make him happy. It
is like, again, as like kind of goofy and silly as it's being, like you do kind of feel for the characters because the movie has done like a good job of making them likable.
And sure enough, after this, like he has his sort of quiet moment, and then like, okay, we have to get out of here, and they leave through the parking area. She's got a bag full of it was cans of soda actually, and he's got his gun and his machete, because the zombie attacks them when they're still in the security room, and they end up like oh no, it's an earlier scene. Okay, I think it's when they were struggling in the corridors just before that, but there's one of the zombies where they basically just rip the head off by wrapping a shirt around it and then pulling, and I'm like,
oh yeah,
how weak is this zombie's neck that just pulling on it with a shirt like ripped off his head?
It's a good point.
I know, but this is kind of the final big thing though, is that they try and get to the car, they fight through the zombies, and the big dramatic part here is that Sushi Boy, despite the fact that he's a zombie, uses his zombie super strength to lift up the shutter that's closed so they can drive through. And despite the fact that he's a zombie, the other zombies all start eating them after the main couple escape.
And not only does he lift the shutter, but he also has to push the car because like the car is stalling on.
So he pushes the car.
It's like and again, like it sounds very silly, but I don't know, like it works in the course of the movie. Like as he's like doing this like task of like pushing the car for like his loved one and her new lover, even though like as much as that hurts him, but he wants her to survive, and like he's doing this as like the zombies are like descending on him, like it's not like I shed a tear or anything, but like I did feel like kind of sad in that moment, like, oh, Sushi Boy.
So the zombies just eat him out of revenge because he's a zombie. It's weird, but all right. And then the movie,
meat is meat,
well, the movie, but then why are zombies not just eating zombies all the time?
That's a good question.
So yeah, the end of the movie is that they're at a petrol station, and the news is talking about the soft drinks, and Woody looks back over at the car, and would you believe it, Rolls has picked up the Lucozade and is taking a swig because she's thirsty. And Woody just goes back to the car and chooses to drink it as well. So they basically, I mean, she doesn't know this, but he's basically just chosen to commit suicide with her. And they're both going to turn into zombies. So it's actually kind of a downer ending.
Yeah.
But what's so weird about it is I just can't imagine Lucozade being happy that their like drink is like the suicide drink at the end of the movie. I don't know. It's like I'm curious. I'm curious about the legalities and like how much they agreed to, and like did they know the context of which their drink was being used. And
I mean, I guess it's a bit more of the mystery of not really having the drink available here. But I mean, honestly, I'd like to try one now. I'm kind of curious.
It's a super common thing here. To be honest, it was actually just kind of weird seeing it in a movie, and it never occurred to me that the US didn't have it until I saw it here and went, oh, I guess it's not a US thing because I've never seen it in a movie before. Oh dear. It's a fun time though. There's a crazy energy to it. There's a bit that made me laugh. Is it when they're in the car area, the car park at the end? I think it is. So someone gets pulled under a car. No, actually, I think it's much earlier. I think it's like much earlier in the same location. Someone gets pulled under the car and killed by a zombie, sort of off camera. But you just see like the pool of blood coming out from under the car. But what made me laugh about it is it's a really quick burst of liquid. So it's almost like someone just had a bucket and just went whoosh. And it just sort of like spills out from under the car. Yeah. I'm like, damn, that was a very quick, pool of blood.
Yeah, there's a couple of fun like kills and stuff that we didn't really go over. Like that whole kind of corridor fighting scene where he has like the power drill is pretty fun. And the I forget like the other people's weapons are not really effective, but
I think one had like a wrench, one had some I can't remember. Yeah.
At one point they stick like a pipe with a little faucet like in someone's head and then turn it on to have all the blood drain, which is fun.
Oh yeah, that was a good little moment. Yeah, because then the blood starts coming out the faucet. Actually, neat little moment we have to mention as your cat is driving me nuts with whatever it's doing.
There's like no food in its bowl, but it like seems to think there is.
Oh, okay. I can just hear this noise. Anyway, but there's a good moment where it's a bit more interesting in a personal level just because of my thought process. Because there was a point in this movie right before the zombie bursts into the security room, right, where they all really become aware that they're zombies. Because up until this point, it's just like a building in the background, and we know that this is dangerous, that some of them are handcuffed because they're going to have to run away soon. And just before the zombie burst in, I actually thought to myself, is like, because I think it's as the zombie bursts in, I thought to myself, like, no one's kind of like noticing, like, they keep saying, yeah, there's this crazy guy around and this guy's crazy and he's killing people. But I was kind of thinking, are they never actually going to, like, say zombie, and not only say zombie, because a lot of movies don't say zombie, but act as if it is a zombie. Are we going to talk about zombie rules? Are we going to, like, acknowledge that, like, is this going to be something that passes from person to person when they bite? All that stuff. And then right after I had that thought is when B has a little flashback to playing House of the Dead, and then he shouts out to the security guard or the cop, shoot him in the head. And I went, okay. In 1 second, we went from like not being sure if these characters know what zombies are to be like, oh no, this guy knows from video games. You shoot them in the head. So this is absolutely going to be, treating this like a zombie movie at this point.
Yeah. That's nice because I was gonna ask you if you knew what game that was. I thought it was House of the Dead, but I wasn't sure.
I think so. But I think it is. I mean, I don't know it well enough to know for 100%, but it looked House of the Dead-y. And I know for a fact that was on the Sega systems. So.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and then there's another like fun part too. Like I think towards the end where he again just like kind of funny video game references, but like he goes to like use his gun at one point and then like it says like reload on the screen.
Oh yeah.
And then I think there's like another point he goes to like use something or like tries to open something and then there's like a little icon of like a key or something that he needs. There's just like kind of like weird little moments, but they're like fun.
Yeah, the more we talk about it, the more like there's a lot of weird little video game influences in this. Which, given this is 1998, like video games were obviously around. Being huge for probably if we're counting the original Nintendo was like when things really got big. It's been over a decade with games been in the zeitgeist.
It's like the thing is though, like what I'm kind of like what I'm like interested in or what thinking about is like people our age were probably like super into like Resident Evil, and then maybe even like stuff like House of the Dead or something. But like I'm curious, like if you have like someone who's like older, like a film, like someone's making a film, I'm assuming they're probably like in their 30s at least or something. But like I'm wondering like, oh, like did they have that much of a video game influence or knowledge? Or I mean, maybe if like stuff was bigger over there or something. I don't know, but
interestingly, the director
like to me, I wouldn't think like I don't know, to me, I feel like I like at that time like I know what Resident Evil is, but I wouldn't expect like a grown up to. But I mean, I guess like they make like Resident Evil references on like Spaced and stuff, so maybe that's not that accurate.
Yeah, the director of this went on to make most of the Ip Man movies by the looks of it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, all of them even. Did 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I've heard those good. I've never really seen them, but
yeah, I've never seen them either.
Check them out.
His first movie was in 1995. So he may have been a relatively young director, but maybe it's partly a culture thing. Because I think for us, like we're looking at this from the perspective of we have never, like when we were growing up, none of our parents were into video games, right? That was something that for us, that was our generation that felt like we were at the forefront. But there are people who are older who were into games who were playing all the way back in the Atari days, who, so it definitely is. It's obviously more widespread as time has went on, but so it's interesting though. It's interesting that all those little references are in there, and it does make you think of something like Shaun of the Dead, and it does feel like it's predating a lot of actual video game adaptations. Not all of them, obviously. Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat and a few others that already happened, but it's just an interesting little slice of I don't know, pop culture, and combine that with all the nostalgia stuff, because this has a lot of tech in it and things that I remember from this time period. Just the idea of the video CD and the Sega Saturn, which did do a lot better in Asia, because the Sega Saturn did not do well anywhere else.
Yeah. What was the TurboGrafx? Was that a Sega system?
No, that wasn't Sega. TurboGrafx 16.
Is it just its own thing?
Yeah, it was just its own thing. I don't know what the parent company was called. But I think the reason why that one was popular amongst like a niche audience was because that was the one that was like more faithful arcade ports. I think like it had like, so I guess technically it was higher quality at the time.
Yeah, the only reason I know of it at all is because there's like one Castlevania game that was really popular.
Of course, it's Castlevania.
Yeah, but it's like the Rondo of Blood, which was basically like kind of the precursor to Symphony of the Night, but like and they did port it to the SNES as Dracula X, but like I guess people don't really like that version as much. I mean, now it's all available like digitally and stuff, so Rondo of Blood is definitely better, but I've always been curious about it. That's the only reason why I know about it.
I mean, you like Zelda games. What about the 3DO with its unique Zelda games? The Philips CDs Zeldas. Oh, is it CDI? Sorry, I'm mixing up my 3DO and my CDI.
You're talking about like the PC ones, right? Like that have like the really bad animations and stuff. I do have a morbid curiosity of those, but I never played them, but I've heard they're absolutely horrible.
Yeah, I've heard only bad things. But yeah, honestly, BioZombie, pretty fun movie. I expect it does have a cult following. It just, for whatever reason, it didn't cross our paths until recently. Yeah, that's something I'm kind of curious about. Yeah, exactly. Like, if this is something people know about, I'm sure it's probably a little niche and cult, but I would think, it might be a little
I wonder if maybe it's just because it's a foreign movie. Maybe like people are less likely to,
I mean, you say that,
check
but
it
like
out.
Trinity to Busan is like the most celebrated zombie movie of the last decade.
That's true. That's a good point. Yeah.
mean-
but I mean, maybe just like because it's older. I don't know.
Yeah, I meant to like maybe like the opportunities for. Do you know what the sad part is? Is this is the same year as Ring came out in Japan, and I do
Oh,
wonder if this had just been a little bit later, if like Western audiences were looking for Asian horror movies, if it would have just like hit a bit harder than it did. Because I think it's true to say that like the audience in the West were a lot more accepting of something like a Train to Busan because we went through the era of Ring and Grudge and all these other movies that sort of get imported over.
I think especially if you did it like, I don't know, like 10 or so years later when like zombies were such a big thing and like
oh yeah
people like there's actually probably a sweet spot that you can pinpoint where like the zombie craze and like the Asian horror movie craze kind of like were intersected, and it probably would have been like the perfect time to
Honestly,
release something like this.
Exactly around the time of Shaun of the Dead, funnily enough. Like it would 2004, 2005 would have been the perfect time for that. As it is, I mean, hell, even TV shows from like Asian countries are doing like Squid Game was like huge.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually like a new. I was just looking at a trailer for this new zombie show on Netflix that actually looks kind of interesting. Like, I think it's called Zom 100, like Bucket List of the Dead or something like that.
Very good.
It actually sounds pretty kind of funny. It's like about a guy who like creates a bucket list of all the stuff he wants to do before he dies in a zombie apocalypse. So I'd watch it, but goddamn Netflix is cracking down on their password sharing. So hopefully we don't have any like exclusive Netflix movies we need to do soon.
Were you mooching off someone's Netflix, Tim?
I was using my brother's password for like 10 years.
The bastards. Yeah, people love to point it out, but there was a time when Netflix would actually tweet things like love is sharing a password. They tweeted that like a decade ago, and now of course things have just completely flipped. Now they're like policing it as much as they can.
The thing that's annoying to me is like it's just like I wish they would have something like with cell phones you have like family plans where it's like, oh yeah, add an additional line for like a discounted fee or whatever. Like with Netflix it's just like, no, either you're part of the same household, or if we notice you're doing it from like a different location, then you have to just open up your own account.
I think
or
no, I think I'm thinking a Game Pass on Xbox. I think they're doing a family plan soon. But it would probably be a good idea for Netflix. I want to say that there is like an option to add on a second account for cheaper.
I mean, maybe the like when I was just kind of looking at it, like the thing that I saw, like it said like, oh yeah, like add your own account for like basically like the cost of like a new membership or whatever, which is like, to me it's like, all right, like if they wanted to do something like, oh, like add an additional line for like another $2 or $3 a month or whatever, and then can split the cost, like I'd be more willing to do that. But it's like, it's not super expensive, but it's just it just annoys me. And then I'm also already paying. It's like I'm paying for other streaming services that I already don't watch everything on, so it's like I don't want to add another thing. It's just whatever.
Well, there's add an extra member. Account owners of standard or premium may, in many countries, can share Netflix with someone who lives elsewhere by adding an extra member to their account. They'll need to purchase an extra member slot to invite the member into that slot. That sounds way more complicated than it needs to be. But yeah, it seems like you can do it. But
I mean, maybe I'll look into it. But I mean, I'm gonna have to do something anyway because the new Castlevania series is out next month, so I'm gonna want to watch that. But
I mean, it's not like Netflix have made anything worth watching in a while, to be honest.
Yeah. I can't think of anything. I do like I Think You Should Leave, but I watched that like just right before the password lockdown squeaked
Got
in.
it in just in time.
Yeah, I was like, oof. All right, back to BioZombie real quick.
Yes.
One thing I was gonna ask, I don't know if you have any filmmaking expertise, maybe you can answer this, but I was kind of curious, like it like they're very kind of set locations, so it seemed like it would kind of be easy to shoot, except for the fact that like there's so much glass everywhere. I was wondering, like, wouldn't you be dealing with so much like reflections of the camera and stuff? But I don't know, like, is there easy ways to get around that, or?
It can get complicated if you're doing a lot of movement with the camera, but I mean, typically all you have to do to avoid a reflection is to shoot at an angle, right? So, and by that I mean, if you're looking straight at the camera, pretend the camera's a mirror, right? If you're looking straight at the camera, you'll get a reflection of the camera and the cameraman and all that. But if you just look at from the side, if you just go 30 degrees over here like this, and look at it like that, you won't see the reflection. Okay. That's the simple trick, but it does get a little bit complicated if you're like, doing a move where you're spinning around and like, it's like you have to really think about like where's the camera pointing, is there going to be a reflection, it does get a little bit complex. I
was just kind of curious because like the like all the shops were like, like these kind of glass like see-through things, so like I was they're pointing it, and like, and to the credit, like I never saw like reflections or anything, but I was kind of curious like if it was particularly hard I imagine like setting that up. But
for most regular shots I don't think it'd have been an issue, and then for some specific sequences that I've really had to have thought about it and like maybe test, like, are they going to you're going to see the camera if we do this here, kind of thing.
But there's easy enough ways to get around it that's not like
it's not a little bit of problem solving maybe, but it's not like impossible. And then modern movies might just use CG to remove a reflection if they need to.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking scenes like, there's that fight in John Wick 2 where it's like a hall of mirrors, like, unlike Enter the Dragon that had to do it without like digital trickery. I'm sure they just, made their life easy in post. But yeah, no, fun time, got a lot of energy. It's pretty funny in points. The characters are kind of like that wacky, unlikable, but kind of likable as well in a weird way. It's got a unique sense of humor, and the zombie stuff is fun despite the fact that the makeup effects and like the fake blood and stuff all look a bit it feels like a pretty cheap movie, but they got to shoot in a real location, which makes it look more expensive, and credit to them. Credit to them, they make the most of what they've got, and I think it works out and has a it's a good fun time. Pacing's good, so
it's like I don't know the exact runtime, but I'm guessing about 90-ish.
Yeah, I think it was 95 minutes.
So perfect, fun little popcorn flick. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Again, like it's one I feel like maybe like people, especially like around our age, that would have nostalgia for this kind of stuff, like would probably particularly enjoy it. But
well, in that case, what are you rating BioZombie?
So I mean, I think I'll go like a pretty decently high score. Like I think I'll give it like a 7. Like I think it's really good. I think it's funny, and and it's interesting because it's funny in ways where it's like kind of like weird and cheesy, but also like funny in ways where it's like, oh no, like you are specifically telling a joke here and the joke is funny. So I'm like laughing. And like you said, like the characters are kind of weird and over the top, but I do think it does do a pretty good job of making them interesting and endearing to the point where like at the end you are like, again, it's not like a movie where you're gonna cry probably, but like when a character dies, like you do kind of feel like, oh, like I like them. And like you said, it's nice and breezy, it doesn't overstay its welcome. Like really the down point is probably the zombie action stuff, which like there is cool moments, but like it's not to the level of something like Evil Dead, like the other movies kind of mentioned before, like Evil Dead 2 or something like Dead Alive, where it has like really like crazy over the top gore and gross stuff. Like they're clearly working on a budget and they do cool stuff, but yeah, there's not enough that, maybe if they had a few more cool kills or something inventive, maybe it might put it a little bit over the edge. But no, I mean, I think 7 is a pretty good score, especially for something that was kind of just a random, like, all right, I'll take a chance on this movie. I didn't hear anything about it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I actually agree. Solid 7. It's good. I don't think it gets up into like great amazing territory, but I think it's a nice little find that I'd recommend horror fans and zombie fans especially to check out. And I think if you're a fan of Asian cinema and you're kind of like familiar with the tone shifting and like weird humor that we're talking about, because I definitely recognize it in other Asian movies. Not all Asian movies, obviously. There's definitely more serious ones. Like it's the I don't know, like Ring, for example, doesn't have this tone. It's a very serious, dark movie about, this thing's coming for your child in 7 days. But I've seen other movies with this type of tone. Especially, I find, I'd say Korea maybe is the one that I think about this the most of. I think there's a lot of Korean movies with this tone. But, this is solid stuff. So there you go. That's BioZombie from 1998. Go and check it out if you are interested, and this sounded like fun. So, but that is the show. I will tell you that obviously Tim is not officially back recording full time yet, but we're kind of inching close to that, and I suspect that we'll have a nice slate of episodes for October for the October-thon, which is nigh. This should be coming out in September, so look forward to that. We've got a sort of rough list we're going to try and get through. We don't know which ones will make the cut necessarily. Some of it's opportunity, some of it's how many we'll be able to do, but you'll definitely get a bunch of episodes in October, so look forward to that. But
the rough list should be like a segment that we do on the show.
Oh, okay. Actually,
I don't know what it is. I just like the name.
We started doing a new segment on Meltdown recently, and it might be a good segment to sort of transplant into Even More Screams, which is one of the bonus shows that's on pause right now on Patreon because Tim's on paternity leave, but may not be too long until that's back in a monthly capacity. So keep an eye out, everyone. Keep an eye out. Anyway, that is the show. You can, of course, support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and get some bonuses and all the sorts. And you can subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, and comment and let us know what you thought of the movie. All of these things do help. But that is the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, and we will see you next time.